Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, join us here. Tell everyone where you're joining us from.
I'm joining from West Hartford, Connecticut.
And it looks like you're at home.
Yeah, beautiful fall day. Just turned October, which is hard to imagine for all of us. But this is the nice season out here, so it's good to be home.
Well, I wanted to start by looking back a little bit before we look ahead to X Games Aspen in January. Going into March, April, that's usually your ramping up time for X Games, summer X Games, right? And so obviously the world shuts down, we all have to sort of pivot and get creative at how we're looking at our brands and our companies. And so I'd love to know, at X Games, which is a company that is really rooted in its storytelling, you're part of ESPN, which is a behemoth media company that we both work for. How did you really lean on the storytelling side of what you all do to get creative and stay connected to your fans, to the athletes, and keep the brand moving through the summer despite not being able to put on an actual competition?
Yeah, it's been, I think, for like everyone who's been in this, same situation we're all in together, it's been an interesting, 7 months now. And actually for us, it started a little earlier even, because when we were in Aspen, and this is January, we had a bunch of events ready to go. We were going to go to China in February. We had Norway in March. We had Minneapolis coming up in the summer. And so we all thought we were in for what was going to be a really busy year. And then obviously, COVID hits. And even while we're in Aspen, we end up having to cancel our China event while we're there. So it's like all of a sudden these signs started to present themselves that things weren't going to be the same. We were lucky, though. We were able to sneak Norway in, literally days before we all shut down. That was literally March, I think, like 7th and 8th. And that was, we're all traveling home from that. And, next thing we know, we're in our houses for the next 6 months. And so from that point, everyone was just trying to learn, like, okay, how long is this going to last? Really, what's the impact going to be? We still, in a lot of ways, we held out hope initially that we could still do Minneapolis. There wasn't like immediately like, oh, it's done. Like, there's no chance of it happening. Could we do it without fans? All the different scenarios. But then eventually, I think everyone, we all kind of came to the same realization that, like, yeah, Minneapolis, isn't going to happen, unfortunately, as much as we all would love to do it. And so that's where, from your specific question, it was like, at that point, we had to start thinking, okay, how are we going to pivot? What are we going to change? How are we going to connect with our audience with the reality that we're not going to have a big summer event? And so for us anyways, like, we were a little bit fortunate in the sense that we had already commissioned multiple reel series. So for us, like, we had Real Street come in, which is our skateboard version. We had BMX come in, we had Moto come in. So we knew we had some like significant meaty projects that we could rally around over the next few months to kind of buy ourselves some more time. And so we really leaned into those, like, really, really heavy. Not that we weren't before, but they became, even bigger parts of what we're doing. And then the other kind of big one was we actually got to celebrate in a funny way, like, our 25th anniversary of X Games last June. And so, you've been around the brand for a long time. It's one of those things where in any other year, we probably don't really celebrate it that much, but at least, with the time that we had, we tried to, get organized, celebrate all the moments. We all got better at like doing Zooms, and we did a panel with, Tony and Travis and Matt, and to actually bring those guys back together and talk about the history, it was pretty cool. It was interesting. It was different. And so those are ways that we tried to just, I think, enhance or diversify our storytelling throughout the months that we didn't necessarily have, live events to lean on, which have always been like really the backbone of what we're doing. So I think, like everyone, we just got a little bit more gritty, figured things out, learned digital ways to do shows. And, we've just leaned on new ways, live Instagrams with Jack Matrani, or, Brandon Graham's doing a World of X Games kind of weekly YouTube show. And then obviously, like, we keep going with our weekly ESPN2 or ABC World of X Games show. And so in a lot of ways we've stayed busy, there's no doubt about it, but like everyone, we're definitely chomping and ready to kind of get back to doing events. So hopefully, 2021, we're able to do that.
Well, and it's interesting, right? I love the word gritty because it makes me think of, sort of getting back to the roots of action sports in the early days of X Games and sort of having to lean on what makes an event like X Games the X Games, right? Like having to get creative, going grassroots, going online. I'd love to hear you talk a little more about the Reel Series, because the Reel Series was something that you already had success with. You'd integrated it into the actual summer and winter X Games. But at a time when, both fans and the company did not have a lot of original content to push out, how important was it to have this series where you're able to safely make very cool content and push it out against all of your platforms? It's online, it's on social, it's on TV. How important was that, and what did you learn from that you might take forward in expanding that series in the future?
Yeah, I think you just painted a really nice picture of it. I think it's, the utility of it is amazing, that we can leverage it for literally every single one of our platforms. And so you have tons of really good social content. The digital content works well on, our website or YouTube. And then obviously it all rolls up into a TV show. That's a nice way to kind of cap a very, I think a very authentic way of showcasing a different athlete than would ever come to the event. I mean, I think that was always the kind of the essence behind the Reel Series, was it allowed us to highlight a whole nother aspect of action sports. And, you were saying like gritty, it's just like, it's this notion of it's like the kids have always been out skateboarding in the street. They've always been filming themselves. There's always been this DIY attitude with with skateboarding or action sports in general. And so Reel Series was just simply a way to, I think, highlight that and allow us to be part of what feels like a really authentic, unique way to highlight athletes in the industries. And I think the other like really cool thing about the Reel Series too is when you look at skateboarding, we work with Jesse Fritsch and his company at Nye, and Jesse's a former X Games athlete. He's the producer of the show. He works with Mike Sinclair, who's another longtime skateboarding industry vet. And like, to me, like, I don't think that would have been possible, I don't know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but it's been cool to see how like literally like the skateboarding industry or the BMX industry or moto, depending on which of the verticals, they're ultimately producing these shows for us, delivering them. We work with them on it, obviously, but it's really kudos to those guys and the products they create and the content they provide. And I think it's really, it's a pretty cool exploration. And that was what we actually did a new one just a couple of weeks ago called Real Street Best Trick, which again, I think it was our nimbleness and our ability to kind of like quickly change and do it on the fly. Like we'd never done that before, but it was probably in like early September. We wanted to try to get one more in before the end of September. And so we were talking to Mike and Jesse about it. And to their credit, they were able to get the videos in, get everyone's like segments shot, turn around the show. It was like a mad dash to the finish line. But at the same time, like the content was awesome. The tricks had never been seen before. Nyjah wins a gold medal. And, I think that's been the really cool thing about the Reel Series is that, the actual like medals for a video or virtual contest have as much meaning as, a medal that an athlete would win at the event. So I don't know if there's a lot of other brands that have like, the physical executions plus the digital executions that, I think ultimately, really bring a lot of value to the athletes, and the athletes are stoked on them. So, I mean, we love doing them, and it's a compliment to the endemic producers who really do all the hard work on them.
So at the other end of that spectrum, that DIY spectrum, is the actual X Games, this event that you're all holding weekly meetings and planning on trying to figure out how to pull this off outside in January, in winter, in the middle of a pandemic, an international event. So, I know you have members of your staff who have gone to the other bubbles and are learning and trying to figure this all out. What have you learned, and what do you see as the 3 or 4 biggest challenges ahead in the next few months?
Yeah, I mean, well, we've learned that it's not going to be normal, as we all say. And I mean, that's the biggest thing, is that, we've, operating the X Games just in general isn't a like simple thing. It's like majorly complex. There's so many people, so many parts, and it always takes a ton of coordination and effort amongst everyone who's involved. And so then you throw I think obviously throw the COVID, challenge into that mix. It heightens everything. It's we've already seen it. It's a challenging process. It's really time consuming. You're working on all kinds of things and new scenarios, new plannings, and everyone's on Zoom. You can't get together and do it in person. And so, we've been at the Aspen planning already for a couple months easily. And I think one of the things that's helped us already though is when, earlier in the summer, when we knew we weren't going to be able to do Minneapolis, we actually started to think about what could we do to replace Minneapolis or do something again that was a little more nimble, more efficient, COVID friendly. And so we did a lot of exploration on, call them smaller events that, didn't require as much infrastructure. And we ultimately didn't end up doing them just for different reasons. It was a little bit rushed and what have you. And so, but again, a lot of the steps we took in terms of working with our health and safety group, figuring out what our COVID mitigation plans were going to be, all of those like early steps, I think helped us to be even a little bit further ahead. And then obviously, I think you referenced it is, like being able to watch everything else is, it's a huge value when you see whether it's been UFC, PBR, MLS, NBA, like everyone obviously is going through all different kinds of challenges and not everything's going to be the same. I mean, as you know, for Aspen, like, we're not going to be able to have a bubble. There's no notion of like closing the ski resort. The ski resort's going to be open. So we end up having we're working on a plan that, hopefully, it's going to be, it's going to be, in our mind, a safe plan. You can't eliminate all of the risk, but at the same time, we're going to put in place all of the necessary mitigation efforts just around COVID and keeping everyone safe. But man, the level that it goes to is crazy because it's like offices and travel and then athletes and like where people are, arriving from, and we're going to have a testing program for everyone. So it's just a ton of detail, and it's definitely nothing that I've ever planned for compares to it because there's so much detail involved in every level. And again, we got a great team to do it. I'm confident that, we'll get the right plan in place, and, looking forward to share what the details of that hopefully soon once we, kind of have it all dialed in.
How much do you think you've learned or are learning throughout this process that you can see actually carrying over to if there is hopefully one day such a thing as a post-COVID world or a new normal that maybe streamlines, things that you wouldn't have thought of if you weren't forced to think about the event in such a, scaled down, streamlined, fanless way? I mean, certainly we want to get fans back there, but what have you learned that might carry on into the future?
Yeah, I think, that's the thing with all of these, that you learn to be, I guess, efficient with people, your time, your space, like all of the, I guess, maybe they were luxuries before in some ways. And, it forces you to get super diligent about like how you're doing every single thing. And so I think those things will carry over for sure. And then from a technology perspective too, I mean, we're going through the different exercises of who doesn't need to come to the venue to actually still be part of the production. Are there ways to integrate people from their houses? And obviously all the leagues are looking at all those scenarios and have been doing them too. But I think it's also allowing everyone to think about how you use new technologies to streamline exactly what you're doing. So I think, and it's going to, the silver lining in some of this is I think there's going to be new efficiencies, clearly new ways to do things. And I think we'll be the beneficiary of those things too.
As as we said at the top, as the oldest, the biggest, the sort of most well-known multi-action sports event out there, how much, if any, pressure do you feel to get this right as a signal to the rest of the industry that this is possible and, you know, sort of be the first to pull off, you know, a big event and, yeah, be that sort of light for the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I don't know if we feel pressure. We're just all like, we're all dying to do it. Like we're all like, we miss being around our, you know, our friends and the people we get to work on. I mean, we've been traveling the world very luckily, like producing fun events. And I think that's where we all want to get back to doing that. But we realize it comes with the responsibility, doing it safe and, you know, taking into account that, you know, there's athletes needs, there's staff needs, there's, you know, everyone we just have to be looking out for. So yeah, I mean, we just all want to do it. I think that's the biggest thing, is to kind of try to get back. You realize that, you know, you got to get back to doing events, and hopefully we're able to do it. We're the first ones to get going on it. It'll be great for everyone.
How much of a sharing of information is there? You know, I was thinking of, you know, all the other action sports events that are also trying to figure this out in real time. Do you all talk amongst yourselves? And then also you mentioned the PBR, the NBA, UFC. How much of a sharing of information is there within with everyone, knowing, you know, no one's going to do this on their own, and everyone should be learning from the mistakes of the leagues that have come first?
Yeah, that's been pretty cool that everyone's been really open to exchanging like their protocols, their manuals, what we're doing, what you're doing. So that's been, you know, I think it's definitely brought everyone together in that way, because like no one knew the exact right way to do this. And then everyone's scenario ends up being a little bit different and unique. And you know, so yeah, I've had many conversations with like other event producers, or you know, people who are working on mitigation plans and what they're doing. And it's, you know, it's anything from testing to cleaning to, you know, office space, office layouts, tents versus trailers, all kinds of different things and different items related to just making sure that you're set up and you're compliant too. I mean, it's a, you know, it's another part of it is, you know, we have to definitely be, you know, adhere to local requirements, state requirements. Obviously we have our own Disney requirements that we have to go through. So a lot of different aspects to consider, but the sharing amongst the industry's been really cool.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. It's something that I've been hearing in a lot of the interviews we've been doing, that everyone sort of came out of their silos and out of their corners, and everyone's sort of sitting at the same table, sharing information, and, you know, for the good of sports in general and live sports certainly. Tim, the last thing I'll ask you before we go is, you know, we've talked a lot about challenges of the past 6 months and looking to the future. What is the thing you're most looking forward to, most excited about as you look into the next year, the next 6 months, 2021?
Oh man, I'm looking forward to things to get a little more normalized. But you know, I think we all realize that's you know, that's not going to happen overnight. And so I think what we're looking forward to is hopefully being able to get back to producing some level of events, and you know, keep generating, you know, great content for our audience and for our fans, and doing that the best we can with, you know, what we're able to work with. So yeah, would I love to be traveling all over the world, still doing events, and you know, that being the norm? I mean, obviously yes, but you know, we're gonna have to take it kind of one step at a time at this point.
Right. Well, great. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you in person again soon.
Yeah, awesome. Great to see you. Thank you.